welcome to Lesson 2, our page speed optimization lesson. It is going to be a quick and fun, down and dirty 101 all on page speed optimization with the goal of ranking better in Google, Bing, and Yahoo. I'm your speaker. I'm Steve Weber. I'm the Director of SEO here at Pepperjam. So let's kick it off. Our agenda for today, we're going to do a quick recap, a really fast recap of what we did in Lesson 1. I'm going to give you some reasons on why page speed is so crucial for search engine optimization. I'm going to give you the areas that should be optimized. All right, so a recap from Lesson 1. And what we were trying to get across in the first lesson was that to win at SEO in 2016, you really need to focus on the user of your site and the outcome that you want to take on any one of your pages. So focusing on your user first and foremost. The first lesson was really a recap, an overview of how you can really optimize your page speed. And why we're doing that is really for that exact reason. It's for your user. As many of you will know, whenever you go to a website and you're waiting 5 or 6 seconds, especially on your mobile phone, you're not really going to trust that website, and you're more than likely going to click off of it and go find another result. So in this webinar, we're going to show you some of the ways that you can keep your users, keep their attention, keep them on the page, and get more conversions. So why does page speed matter? Well, there are a couple key case studies that have happened over the past couple years, and I think all three of these really serve as great examples. Not that we really need to sell you too much on faster is better, but here are some case studies. So Walmart really knuckled up and focused on their site speed, and they found that for every 1 second they made their web experience faster, they saw that with a 2% conversion increase. So imagine what that's like at scale, having a very fast website and a 2% conversion increase. If you could do that with a couple hours worth of work, and in some cases a couple minutes worth of work, seems like it's worth it, right? So Firefox also had a case study. They found that when they reduced their load time by 2.2 seconds, their conversions, which for Firefox is downloads, increased by 15 points. That came to 10 million additional downloads that year. So Google is always doing case studies of their own, and they have some neat facts that they share on their Think with Google site as well. And if you've never been to that site, definitely go check it out. They have some tools to help you with site speed on there too. But I like this statistic. It says when your site or app, when it's clumsy, 25% of all smartphone users are immediately going to switch to another app or site. So that's 30% of your audience if you are slow. So keeping it going, we have this whole idea that we built this webinar around, and it's out of the field of dreams school of thought. If you build it, they'll come. Sure, people will wind up at your website. If you build it slow, they're not going to stay. They're not going to convert. So let's talk about how Google is using page speed. Well, in 2010, they filed some patents, and they actually made this public, and it's rare that Google gives you a tip to what is a search ranking signal. And they wrote on their Webmaster Central blog, which is a great resource for SEO tips. But in 2010, they told us all speed is a ranking signal. And more recently, there's talks of not only is speed a signal, but now that Google is ranking separately on a desktop index and then on a mobile index, now it's coming to pass that mobile page speed will be a ranking signal. So that Think with Google site now has a new tool 2 weeks ago. It's called testmysite.thinkwithgoogle.com. And if you put your homepage URL in there, it's going to give you some site speed metrics, which we're going to pause and test in a minute or two. There it gives you some neat tips, and it says if your domain is half of all visitors will leave in 3 seconds. It looks like your domain is slow on mobile phones. Unfortunately, most people won't wait very long before leaving a slow site. So you're getting the message now that, we're not doing this necessarily for Google. We're actually not doing any of these webinars for Google. Sure, we're reaping the rewards of ranking higher than our competitors, but we're really doing this for our users. Google is in business of ranking the best result for any given query. But that's kind of a loaded statement. The best result is the best result that that user or that searcher at any given time is looking for. If that searcher is to wind up on your site, Google has to make sure that your site is the absolute best result. So that's the direction we're going in. So it all comes down to figuring out, where are you at currently? Let's get that benchmark. How long is it taking your site to load? So one of the tools, the online tools that I like to use to get just the page load time as well as the file size is this site here. It's Gtmetrix.com. It's in the upper left corner of this slide. Actually, on any of these slides that we're going to talk about today, they all kind of follow the same format. I'll give you a couple examples and I'll walk you through it, and then the URL for where you wind up here online and whichever test or resource that we're using is going to be right there in the upper left corner. So it said that you should keep a rule of thumb of trying to keep your website's load time under 3 seconds. No one's really got a long attention span, so in this example, it looks like their page load time is 4.5 seconds. You want to try and keep that a little bit lighter. So it would be wise to figure out where you are currently before we get into all these optimizations. Just get a second. Go out to gtmetrix.com, in second figure out what your homepage is. And please know that Google uses an average. It's based on where in the world your server is in conjunction to where the person that's going to be loading your website is and all the assets and where they are on your page. So these things do vary around, especially if you're using something like a content delivery network to expedite any of your images or scripts. So it's just a benchmark to see where you stand. So check out Gtmetrix, but what we're going to use actually for this webinar and how I explain some of this to you is Google's own scoring system. So Google has this tool called Page Speed Insights, and this is the same exact tool that fills out the new Think with Google Test My Site tool. So what this is Page Speed Insights is designed for all of us. You can use this, you could put your competitors' sites in this, and it's going to give you a view much like the one on the right. You put in any page, could be your home page, but you put that in, and it's going to tell you which areas of your website that you need to optimize. It's really showing you your opportunity. So it gives you a score from 1 to 100, 100 being Google, in the eyes of Google, your site is very optimized and you're focused on site speed. So it gives you some areas of what you should fix, what you should consider fixing, and this is going to be different for each and every website that you load in here. So it'd be a good idea, and the way we use this is we'll put in our client's domain, just their homepage, and as we work in, we'll focus on category pages and then landing pages. But to start, we put in the homepage, then we put in a couple competitors, and we see, it's rare that sites are really, really fast. It's almost like that's perfection, and that's not really what we're striving for. But being that Google is a ranking system and we need to be the best result for the user, we need to be closer to perfect, or at least closer to the best than our competitors. So it said that site speed might not give you this gigantic ranking boost, but let's say the value of your page and your competitors were exactly equal. This would be that differentiating factor that would let you rank higher than them. So that's why we're talking about page speed today. And let's now pause for a minute and get your speed on Google PageSpeed Insights URL. I'm going to put this in the chat window. If you could take a minute, go out to this URL, and we are going to have you get your site speed score. So let's do this real quick. All right, so this Google URL I just threw into the chat window. I realize you can't click it in my slide share here, but click on that URL, take a minute, throw in your homepage URL into the tool, and see what your score is for desktop and mobile. You don't need to reply back to me. You can keep the information. It's really for you to get a benchmark for the things that you need to fix on your site. And for the rest of the webinar, I'm going to talk you through what some of the most common areas of optimization for your site speed are, but it's all going off of this Google PageSpeed Insights score. So follow along with my audio. I'm going to jump back into the presentation, but it is a good idea to jump out to that so that you get your frame of reference for what we're talking about. So Google is going to give you a score of 1 out of 100, tell you what to fix, and that's great and all. But what if we didn't build our site? What if we're not a developer? What if we don't even know where to begin, where to research, and how to optimize our site, where we can change things like images or compressed scripts? Every part of the web is different. And what I like to do when I first get a client and I have no information on how the site has been built, I use this site here. It's another tool. It's called builtwith.com, and it gives me the lay of the land to know which type of web server they're on, if they're using a content management system or platform like WordPress or an e-commerce system like Magento or WooCommerce. It gives you a frame of reference for where to start, and I think that's good to know that information if you already don't. With the audience today being primarily Pepperjam publishers, I imagine some of you do. Some of you do know that your site is built on WordPress, it uses X or Y plugin, and you really know where to go to optimize. But if you don't, builtwith.com is great to kind of show you what your site is built up. So the two things we're looking at today is which web server are you? Are you using Nginx, Apache, or a Windows server? And are you built on WordPress or just straight HTML? So I can make some assumptions based on the data that BuiltWith has. So in the US, it seems like web servers are primarily Apache, Nginx, or Windows servers. I could venture to say a lot of us on the call today have WordPress sites, which are probably on an Apache server. And it looks that way when it comes to CMS. So more than likely, as we go through our areas to optimize, I'll be speaking towards a website that's built on WordPress. And the web server for WordPress is most likely Apache unless you changed it. And in Apache, there is a file called htaccess file. And in this file, you can paste in code and do a lot of what Google is recommending that you do. So some of you, when you pasted your page speed score, and you pasted your URL into the tool, you see something like you need to enable compression on some of your files. And basically what that means is, think about the last time you sent a large email file. More than likely, you probably had to zip that up in a zip file. Well, the internet, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, text, it's really no different. That zip file also has a certain type of compression. It's called GZIP that you can use on the web. And this snippet of code is an example of what goes inside that htaccess file. And trust me in saying all of this in WordPress is a Google search or a plugin away. So if one of your should fix or consider fixing says enable compression, what you would do in PageSpeed Insights is click show more information, and then file types you might be missing. So let's say, for example, you're example.com and it says you need to start compressing your JavaScript files, you would see examples in there where it says example.com/something.js, and you'd see more files that end in JS. Basically, that means you're not compressing them, and you need to tweak your compression script so that you are catching the JavaScript files. Next, PageSpeed Insight loves to give you the easiest way to compress your site, and a lot of times it can be overlooked. Images. So it'll say, and I've circled it here on the right side, in PageSpeed Insights it'll talk about optimize images, and then it'll have that blue clickable link where it says show how to fix. When you click that, it's going to list them from largest file size to smallest. So basically your biggest opportunity to compress. If you were only able to do one or two, you'd want to do the first two. And it's saying that you should compress them. Well, image compression has actually come a long way. There's two types of compression that I recommend, and this tool called compressor.io can help you do that. And what they do basically is you will save your image, drag it into compressor.io, and it'll give you the percentage difference that you're saving at the bottom. The neat part about this is it won't lose any of the visual clarity. It's just saving an actual file size, so it'll still look good on the web. So optimize your images. That's one of the easiest ways you could do it. Drag your files into compressor.io, save the new smaller file size, and re-upload them over the original image on your site. Please note with any of this, if your site is a little complex, you probably do want to check with your developer. I realize there are caveats, and some of us on the phone are more savvy than others. Yes, iPhones do have Retina display, which need crazy, huge images, but there are ways to not deliver those pictures for each and every device. So if you're not doing anything with Retina display or anything too complex, definitely check out compressor.io. Next, one of the areas that you can optimize your site is in your fonts. So if you have a beautiful looking site that you're raving to all your friends about, and it's got graphics galore and fonts and calls to action, and chances are you've uploaded a lot of fonts to your website, and it's an area of opportunity to just condense that. So I wanted to point you in the direction of a tool that is from Google. Google has google.com/fonts. It lets you add most of the major font sizes, and as you can see in the lower right corner, it'll give you a snippet of code so that these fonts are hosted on Google instead. And the file size, it gives you a little odometer to see, how much weight is this going to be on your file size. I think it's a neat tool. It's worth checking out. And the cool part about this is if you use Google for fonts, chances are your searchers have already downloaded this, and the fonts you're using are cached on their computer already so that your users won't need to download them again. So I definitely recommend google.com/fonts if you are doing a lot of work with your fonts and want to save some of your file size. When you save in file size, you make your site quicker. Next, the very next thing we could talk about, we can cross off 3 of these things on our list as one. And if you see this word minify in your PageSpeed Insight score of consider fixing or should fix, let me explain what minify is. It's actually real simple. If you've ever looked at code, whether that's a style sheet, a JavaScript file, or HTML source code, it probably looks a little strange if you're not a programmer, but more than likely it reads from top to bottom, left to right, just like English, and the white space is in there really for human eyes. Our browsers, Chrome, iOS, Firefox, they don't need white space. You can minify all of that white space out so it's just in one line, just like you would in text. Use word wrap. Browsers will be able to interpret it, and the file size will be much smaller, making your website quicker. So I do have a resource to share with you there. It's called minifycode.com. It's another online tool. And I would, for these, get your developers help with minifying your style sheets, JavaScript, and HTML. Next is leverage browser caching. So in PageSpeed Insights, this is one of the more often culprits I see. And basically what this is it's Google saying, if you want a better optimized experience for speed, you should consider, once a visitor has downloaded your entire source code, all of the images, don't make them download it a second time when they come back. You know, with a lot of our sites taking a second or third time for our visitor to come and learn everything about our products and the products we're promoting, you know, it's going to take a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh visit. And they shouldn't have to download the files each and every time if they aren't changing. So that's what Google is saying here, is saying, you know, start using caching and save these files locally in their browser so that they don't need to download them each and every time. And if you think about that at scale, that's a great opportunity to save on files. So if you are on WordPress or Apache, this snippet of code at the bottom is an example of how to fix this. So on the right side, I clicked expand to see how to fix it in PageSpeed Insights. And in the example, we use calvinklein.com, and they are using browser caching, but it looks like, if you could see the file extensions on these images, they just need to add in PNG. That's why I have that one red. But the snippet of code down there basically works like this: files that end in JPG, JPEG, PNG, GIF, PDF, CSS, JSS. That's what the $sign means, is anything that ends in those file size. Extend that cache out to, I believe in seconds, that's 1 week, but you could extend that even longer. So at the moment, those files were only extended for 1 hour, but they don't change often, so you could consider extending them out longer. And you would do that in the htaccess file just by pasting that code. So we've talked a lot about specific things you can do to fix your site in terms of site speed and optimize for your opportunity. I wanted to point out this URL here. As we were doing research for our lesson, we found that a lot of you really were using WordPress, and it makes sense to kind of look at W3 Total Cache. It's a great WordPress plugin to leverage caching, minify files, but at the same rate, in doing that, it's got awesome documentation in this guide. So please check out that plugin, check out this guide. It's gtmetrix.com/WordPress optimization guide from Gtmetrix, all about the W3 Total Cache plugin. It will help you optimize your site. So we are going to wrap this up. We're going to go to Q&A, but I wanted to quick give you a recap to see how you benchmark your site, where you're at, and so you can begin to research how to fix your site speed opportunities. So the first tool I gave you, and when we paused, was Google PageSpeed Insights. Now they have a new version of that. It's testmysite.thinkwithgoogle.com. All you do is put your homepage URL into it, gives you your score. If you want to see what your total file size is, as well as how long your site takes to load in seconds, check out gtmetrix.com. And if you don't already know what platform your site's built on, check out the site builtwith.com. So we do have a question from Julia. It says, we're doing extremely well with our SEO until one day it all stopped from Google. Julia went from 5,000 clicks to 20,000 clicks through SEO in over a 30-day period with 6 million pages indexed, and then it shut down. Any insight into why that happened? It could be one of a lot of things, but if you see an increase in traffic and then all of a sudden it drops off, that is a red flag. So what Google likes to do is, Google is a crawler. It indexes websites and determines its usefulness, relevance, quality. It's all kind of synonymous. But if you see that spike, Google is more than likely running you through what's called the Panda algorithm or the quality algorithm and trying to get a feel for where you should rank in terms of quality. So the first place I'd look at your site is to see, do you have any duplicate content? Are you scraping content from other websites? Because more than likely it is a quality issue. But I will say in our next lesson, which I'm going to fast forward right here, we're still doing the Q&A, but if you join our next lesson, I would check out Google Search Console. It used to be called Google Webmaster Tools. There is no better source to say if you've been hit with a manual penalty, if your homepage has any errors, or if your site is just blocking Google outright. It's kind of hard to say without looking at the site, but that Google Search Console is the control panel to see exactly what's going on. So if it was giving you traffic through the roof for a short period of time and then it fell off, I'm thinking it's some sort of algorithmic demotion. I can't really call it a penalty without knowing more about it. This is the new version of PageSpeed Insights, testmysite.thinkwithgoogle.com. You know what? I think Best Buy is probably an okay example. Let's throw them in. And what it does is it crunches your site, gives you opportunities to optimize. So this is the same site that I had you use earlier, but it shows you your mobile friendliness, mobile page speed score, desktop score, gives you some fun facts, and then you could view the details, see what to fix. Okay, Leora asks, our site is image heavy. Did you say we have to run every image through an image compressor before loading, or is there a plugin that can do this automatically? She writes, we can load from Shutterstock directly into our site, which she says is efficient, but we've been using medium size. Maybe we should consider changing to small or negate the need for compression. So it's a great question. We all want our websites to look as beautiful as possible. With the page speed hat on, think about it like this. The more you have on your site, the more calls to scripts, the more functionality, the more images you have in there, the longer it's going to take your website to load. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you add an element of not compressing your images into that, it starts to get larger and larger and larger. So what I would say is, to begin, test one of your images. I don't know what your homepage looks like, but maybe there's a gigantic image in a scroller at the top. What I would do is replace one of those images. See if you notice a difference in time on site, notice a difference in your conversion rate, notice a difference in your page speed insights. Then compress two images. We're talking about compression here that makes the most sense for your largest bottlenecks. And when I say bottleneck, what I mean is obstacles that's causing your site to be slow. More than often, there's only a handful of sure bet. You know, if we spent 5 minutes fixing this, it would make the site 50% quicker. Every site has a different story, but more than likely you have some really large images somewhere on your site. Run it through Google's test, see which images that those are, and I would say compress, the first two, see if it makes a difference. That being said, there are plugins. I don't know which platform you have, but if you are using WordPress or Magento, there are plugins you should consider looking at which will losslessly compress each of your images. If your situation allows for that, I would recommend go for it. Give it a shot. If it can make your site quicker and it's not a lot of work, definitely leverage it. So what is our next question? So we have a WordPress theme, and one of the issues that came up when testing the website speed was render blocking JavaScript. Any recommendations how to fix that? Oh, this question is great. So, yeah, there was a bottleneck that I kind of dodged in the whole presentation, and I did that because this gets a little complex. So they're asking about render blocking JavaScript. So what primarily makes up websites is HTML source code, style sheets, which you'll see those files end in CSS, and then JavaScript. Good JavaScript, like the functionality, how the site works, and the scripts to do that. Well, they're specifically asking about render blocking JavaScript. And basically, I have to answer this at the highest level. Basically, what that means is they're loading how the site works before how the site looks. So to whoever asked that question, I would look at your source code. You're making some calls to JavaScript, which Google PageSpeed is recommending that you pull down later in how you load them, or giving you an alternative. You could load them asynchronously. If you do have the ability to do that, asynchronously means, cool, you see this loaded in the background, let's move on to other things. But what PageSpeed Insight is saying, you're render blocking, you're loading them a little too early in a manner that's pausing how the site looks to display on the screen for a user. So there's probably somewhere in your load time, maybe it's a second, maybe it's a millisecond, where the screen's going to flash and things start to display for the user. Google's saying you do have an opportunity to kind of load that better. I did my best to dodge that question in the actual PowerPoint presentation. I'll be the first to admit that because it is a little complex and every situation is really different. But I hope that high-level answer at least points you in the right direction, that you probably are going to need a developer's help with rearranging that, or at least whoever created that template to kind of point you in the right direction for what would be safe to move around. It's great having all of the publishers on the call. Hopefully we help make your website quicker. I wanted to thank you all. We are going to sign off for today. Thank you.